I was sitting quietly at the table beside my 7-year-old grandson during my son's second wedding when he suddenly grabbed my hand and whispered, "Grandma, I want to leave right now." I looked at him and asked softly, "What's wrong?" He trembled and said, "Grandma, it didn't look under the table, did you?" A cold feeling ran through me. I slowly lowered my gaze beneath the tablecloth and froze. I took Leo's hand, and we both stood up in silence. The ballroom around us glowed with candlelight, music, and laughter. Everyone was celebrating Alex's marriage to his new wife, Ava. My little grandson sat next to me, pushing his red toy car across the white tablecloth, lost in his own small world. I reached out and straightened his tiny bow tie, and for a moment it felt like touching the memory of his mother, Maria, whose gentle smile I still remembered so clearly. Soft jazz music filled the air, blending with the sound of glassware and conversations. White roses decorated every table, and candlelight reflected off silver plates. I looked around for Alex. He was walking from table to table, smiling brightly for everyone, even though I knew a piece of his heart had never healed since losing Maria. Across the room, Ava posed for photos in her beaded wedding dress, looking flawless and confident. Something in my chest tightened when I looked at her, but I pushed the feeling away and blamed it on being emotional. Waiters moved gracefully between tables, serving wine and arranging napkins. An elderly couple at our table smiled warmly and asked how old Leo was. "He just turned 7, I replied. Then I cut a small piece of cake for him. He looked up with grateful eyes, then went back to pushing his toy car as if that tiny red toy was the only place he felt safe. Suddenly, Leo stopped. His hands froze. His big round eyes lifted to mine with a seriousness no child should ever have. A bad feeling swept through me. He grabbed my hand tightly, his little fingers ice cold. "Grandma, I want to leave right now," he whispered again, his voice shaking. My heart pounded. I leaned closer and placed a hand on his shoulder. "What's wrong, sweetheart? Tell me." He pressed his lips together, shuddering. Then he whispered so quietly that I had to bend closer, "Grandma, it didn't look under the table, did you?" His words stabbed straight into me. Trying to stay calm, I lifted the edge of the white tablecloth. In the dark space under the table, among the chair legs and Leo's small swinging shoes, I saw it. A tiny piece of paper folded neatly into 4. It was almost hidden in the darkness, but its presence chilled my blood. Leo pressed himself against me, gripping my arm tightly. I could feel his shaky breaths. Every tremor felt like a warning. I crouched down and picked up the note with trembling fingers. Around us, people laughed and toasted, unaware that my world had narrowed to just me, Leo, and that small slip of paper. I unfolded it. The candlelight was enough to read the rushed handwriting. Table 8. Add shrimp to the child serving. Only a few words, but they hit me like a punch. I felt the air leave my chest. My veins turned to ice. Leo is severely allergic to shrimp. Everyone in our family knows that. Even a tiny piece could put his life in danger. Who would write something like this?
And why?
On my son's wedding day? I squeezed Leo's trembling hand. Then I stood up abruptly, ignoring the surprised looks from the people around us. The elderly couple beside us stopped talking and watched me with concern. I hugged Leo tightly, terrified of what could have happened. The music played on, the guests kept laughing, and Ava continued smiling for pictures. But for me, everything had fallen into a heavy, suffocating silence. Memories pulled me away from the bright wedding hall and back to the days when our family was whole. I once believed Alex's home would always be full of laughter. But life can change everything in a moment, leaving scars that never truly heal. I remembered Maria, my first daughter-in-law, like morning sunlight through a window. Her smile was warm and gentle, and she always made me feel like I had gained a real daughter. Maria was the kind of woman who never raised her voice or caused worry. Just being around her made you feel calm. I still remember those windy afternoons in Phoenix when I used to visit Alex and Maria's little home. Leo, who had just learned to walk, would run around the backyard chasing a colorful rubber ball, laughing the whole time. Maria would stand on the porch with a basket of fresh vegetables, smiling as she watched him. "Mom, Betty, try the chili I made. Tell me what you think," she would say proudly as she handed me a warm bowl. I would sit with her, eating and talking about simple things, while baby Leo crawled on the floor with his old toy car. But the memory that never leaves me is the night Leo became terribly sick. His fever was so high his little body felt like fire, and his eyes were barely open. Maria held him close, tears falling silently. "Mom, Betty, I'm so scared," she whispered. I sat beside her, taking turns placing cool cloths on his forehead, trying to comfort her. "Don't worry, sweetheart. He's strong. He's going to be fine." But inside, fear pressed down on my heart like a heavy stone. We stayed awake until dawn, and only when the first rays of sunlight appeared did Leo's fever finally break. He fell asleep in Maria's arms. She looked at me with red, tired eyes but a small, grateful smile. "Thank you, Mom. I don't know what I would have done without you." I squeezed her hand tightly, silently promising that I would always be there for her and Leo. I truly believed that little family would stay happy forever. But then everything changed in one terrible moment. I was washing dishes when the phone rang. A police officer's cold voice came through the line. "Mrs. Williams, we regret to inform you there has been an accident." I don't even remember hearing the rest. My hands shook so badly that a plate slipped from my fingers and shattered on the floor. Maria was gone. A truck had lost control and crashed into her car on the highway. My world collapsed. Her funeral took place on a day of pouring rain, as if the sky itself was mourning. 4-year-old Leo sat in my arms, confused, looking around with innocent eyes. "Grandma, where's my mommy?" he asked. I hugged him tightly, swallowed my tears, and whispered, "She's in a beautiful place, my love." But inside, my heart was breaking apart. Alex stood before the coffin, shoulders shaking, unable to speak. The look in his eyes told me part of his soul had died with Maria. After that, Alex changed completely. He buried himself in work, leaving early and returning late, trying to outrun the emptiness inside him. But Leo suffered the most. He spoke less, and his eyes often looked lost, as if waiting for someone who would never come back. I became his anchor. I took him to school every morning and sat beside him every night. "Grandma, tell me a story about my mommy," he would beg. And I would, even though my voice always trembled. Stories about Maria singing him to sleep, cutting fruit into tiny pieces for his favorite dessert. Every story was my way of keeping her alive in his heart. Lucy, my adopted daughter, played a big role in those days too. She often came over with coloring books or freshly baked cookies. She loved Leo like he was her own little brother. She would help him read, carry him around, or spend hours drawing with him. "Look, Leo, your house looks prettier than mine," she would laugh, her voice clear and bright. But sometimes I noticed something else. Lucy would watch Alex quietly when he came home from work. It wasn't a sibling's look. It was deeper. I saw it, but I said nothing. I didn't want to disturb the fragile peace, holding our family together. Alex's house lost much of its warmth, but thanks to Lucy and Leo, a small light still remained. I did everything I could to keep it from going out. Yet deep down, I knew Alex and I both carried wounds that would never fully heal. Every time I looked at Leo sleeping, I saw Maria's features in his little face, and my heart ached all over again. One day, I was sitting in my living room listening to the sparrows outside, my heart heavy with mixed feelings. Alex was bringing someone home for the first time since Maria's death. I tried to be open. I wanted to see this young woman the way a mother should, hoping she could bring happiness back into my son's life. But there was a strange uneasiness inside me that I couldn't ignore. That afternoon, Alex arrived later than usual. I was in the kitchen making Leo's favorite tacos when the door opened. Alex walked in with a glow on his face, a look I hadn't seen since the early days with Maria. "Mom," he said quietly, leaning against the doorway, "I want you to meet someone." I paused and turned to him, my heart suddenly nervous. "Someone special?" I asked gently. He smiled, a warm, confident smile I thought I'd never see again.
Yes.
You're going to like her very much. I nodded and wiped my hands on my apron, trying to hide the worry growing inside me. After Maria, I never imagined anyone could fill the space she left behind for Alex, for Leo, or for me. That night, Ava walked into my home. She wore a light blue dress, her hair perfectly curled around her face, her lips softly painted with red. And her smile, charming and flawless, looked almost rehearsed. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Williams," Ava said in a sweet, polite voice, giving me a slight bow. I smiled back, invited her inside, and poured her a cup of hot, aromatic coffee. "Your house is so cozy," she said, looking around at the family photos on the wall, especially the one of Maria holding baby Leo. Her eyes stayed on that picture a little too long enough to make me uncomfortable. Dinner continued in a warm atmosphere I tried hard to maintain. I placed all the dishes I had prepared on the table: corn tortilla tacos, red sauce enchiladas, and a fresh mango salad Leo loved. Alex sat beside Ava, smiling at her constantly, his happiness shining in every gesture. "Mom, Ava works in marketing at my company. She's very talented," he said proudly. Ava smiled, serving me an enchilada with a graceful but calculated movement. "This is delicious, Mrs. Williams. You must teach me the recipe someday," she said warmly. I smiled politely, though something in me stayed uneasy. The way she talked, the way she laughed, it felt too perfect, like I was watching someone perform a rehearsed act. Leo sat at the head of the table, unusually quiet. Normally, he couldn't stop talking about school, but tonight he picked at his food, avoiding Ava's eyes. Ava leaned closer, took out a chocolate bar from her purse, and placed it in front of him with a bright smile.
"This is for you."
"It's very good, Leo." But Leo didn't touch it. He just clutched his silverware tightly and turned away. I saw fear flicker in his eyes, and my heart tightened. Alex frowned, ready to scold him. "Leo, why are you being rude? Ava gave you candy." I quickly stepped in. "It's fine. He's just tired, Alex." My son sighed and turned back to Ava, pouring her more wine, trying to keep the night cheerful. Lucy, my adopted daughter, was also at the table. She ate quietly, but I noticed her expression change when Ava slipped her hand onto the table to hold Alex's. Lucy froze, her fingers tightening around her glass before she looked down again. She didn't say anything, but that silence felt heavy. After dinner, Ava insisted on washing the dishes. "Let me help you rest, Mrs. Williams," she said with cheerful energy. I finally agreed and watched her clean the kitchen perfectly, the sink shining, dishes neatly stacked. For a moment, I wondered if maybe she really was a kind girl. But when I walked into the living room, I saw Leo coloring quietly. Ava sat beside him, praising his drawing. "You draw so well, Leo. What is it? Let me see." Leo instantly dropped the crayon and leaned back, looking afraid. Ava glanced at me, forcing a quick smile. "He's such a shy boy." But I saw something cold flash in her eyes. Alex didn't notice anything. He was busy laughing at his own stories, pouring more wine, and smiling at Ava as if she were flawless. That night ended with Alex absolutely delighted, walking Ava to the door, his eyes following her lovingly. I watched them leave, a strange tightness settling in my chest, a feeling that something wasn't right. Time passed, and Ava began appearing more often. One sunny weekend morning, while I was knitting, Ava arrived with a bright smile. "Mrs. Williams, I'd like to take Leo to the park. Is that okay?" I looked at Leo playing with his wooden blocks. His face didn't change at all. "Of course," I said, forcing a smile. "Fresh air'll be good for him." She took his hand and walked out. I watched them leave with a strange heaviness. When they returned, Ava looked triumphant. He had so much fun. He wouldn't stop going down the slide, and he even asked for more ice cream, she said excitedly. But Leo's shirt was dirty, covered in dry mud. He stayed silent, holding his toy car, not saying a single word about the outing. "Did you have fun, sweetheart?" I asked gently. He just nodded without looking at me. Before I could say anything else, Ava cut in quickly. I already told you, Mrs. Williams, he loved it. I nodded, but inside me a small piece of doubt fell into place. Another time, when Alex was at work, Ava showed up without warning. While I cooked in the kitchen, I heard her talking to Leo in the living room. At first her voice was soft, then suddenly sharp. Stay still, Leo. Don't make a mess. You're not a baby. I froze at the counter, a shiver running through me. When I walked out, Ava instantly switched back to her sweet tone. Our Leo is so clever, she said, smiling brightly. Look at his tall tower. But Leo only pressed his lips together and looked at me quietly, as if asking for help. I tried to calm myself. Maybe she just wasn't used to children. That's what I told myself. Leo's 7th birthday is a moment I will never forget. Lucy arrived with the chocolate cake she had baked, Leo's favorite. When she placed it on the table, he shouted with joy and hugged her tightly. Aunt Lucy, this is my favorite cake. It's for you, my love, she told him with warmth. Seeing them made my heart glow. For a moment, it felt like our family was whole again. Ava stood in a corner, clapping half-heartedly with a stiff smile. Her only gift was a pat on Leo's shoulder and a dry happy birthday chant. Leo shrank away slightly. My heart ached again. Another day, Alex took Ava and Leo grocery shopping. When they came back, Ava complained loudly. Leo dropped a whole bag of candy at the checkout. I had to pay for it. What a clumsy boy. Alex scolded Leo immediately. Leo, you need to be more careful. You're not a baby. Leo lowered his head, fingers twisting together, and looked at me with silent pleading. I quickly placed my hand on his shoulder. It's okay, sweetheart. It was just candy. But inside, questions kept growing. Why was Ava always irritated with him? Why couldn't she show even a little of the patience Maria had? One afternoon, when I picked Leo up from school, his teacher took me aside. Mrs. Williams, Leo has been very quiet lately. Is everything okay at home? I forced a smile. I'm sure it's just the changes. But on the way home, Leo tugged my blouse with trembling fingers. Gran, I don't want to go home with Miss Ava. I knelt down, feeling my heart squeeze. Why, sweetheart? Miss Ava loves you. Even as I said it, I felt wrong. Leo shook his head firmly.
No, Grandma.
She doesn't love me. I stroked his hair, trying to calm him, but deep down, I knew he was telling the truth. Lucy overheard. She turned away silently, her shoulders tightening. All those little signs, all those pieces I had ignored, they had been there all along. And then came Alex's wedding day. Sunlight filled the ballroom, making the decorations shine. I sat at table 8 with Leo and Lucy. Leo played with his little red car, whispering vroom vroom. Lucy, in a simple beige dress, leaned toward him with a soft smile, offering him a small piece of bread. Though our family had suffered so much, those two were the warmth of my heart. Alex, in his elegant navy suit, walked around happily, raising toasts. His smile looked brighter than it had in years. I wanted to believe he had finally found happiness again. But every time I looked at Ava, laughing loudly for the cameras, holding her wine glass like a trophy, that uncomfortable thorn returned to my chest. Her smile seemed too perfect, too polished. The jazz band played softly. Waiters served crackers, cheese dip, and fresh shrimp. Leo carefully pushed the shrimp plate away. I frowned and quietly asked him, "Don't you like this, my love?" Leo shook his head and looked away, as if hiding something. I wanted to ask more, but a relative suddenly interrupted with a cheerful voice. "Leo is being so good, Betty. Look how big he's gotten." I smiled and said, "He's a smart little man now." But inside I was worried. Leo never refused food like this. Across the hall, I noticed Ava looking toward our table. Her smile tightened for a second before she continued laughing and toasting with another guest. I tried to tell myself I was imagining things until everything changed. Leo was playing with his toy car when he pushed it too hard, and it rolled under the table. He bent down to get it, but suddenly froze. His eyes widened at something under the table. I leaned down to ask what was wrong when he slowly pulled out a small folded piece of paper. His hands shook, his face pale. He grabbed my hand and whispered urgently, "Grandma, let's go. Please, let's go now." My heart started racing. "What's wrong, my boy?" I whispered, trying to stay calm. But the fear in his eyes made it impossible. Trembling, he asked, "You didn't look under the table, did you?" His question felt like a cold knife. I lifted the tablecloth and looked into the darkness under the table. The paper lay beside his chair, small and harmless, yet terrifying. I picked it up with shaking hands and opened it. In the dim candlelight, I read the rushed handwriting. Table 8. Add shrimp to the child serving. Just a few words, but they hit me like a shock. I crushed the paper in my fist. The music, the laughter, everything around me faded. Across the room, Ava sparkled in her wedding dress, smiling as if nothing in the world could bother her. Alex was busy taking photos with his friends, glowing with happiness. But for me, the entire ballroom suddenly felt like a staged lie, hiding a horrible truth. Leo, my grandson, the child I loved more than anything, had almost been the target of something evil, right on his father's wedding day. I turned to Lucy, my adopted daughter, sitting beside Leo. She saw my expression and instantly grew worried. "Take care of Leo," I said, trying to steady my voice. Lucy nodded and pulled him close, holding him protectively. "Where are you going?" she whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't know myself. I hurried into the hallway. My legs felt heavy, but my heart beat fast. Near the bar, a few waiters were chatting. I recognized David, the one who had served our table. I walked straight up to him, held the paper in front of him, and asked firmly, "Do you know who sent this?" David looked at the note, and his face changed immediately. His smile disappeared, replaced by fear. "Oh my God, this is my note," he stammered. "A woman gave it to me. I must have dropped it while carrying the tray." His explanation was both a relief and another source of panic. "Who gave it to you?" I demanded. I don't know her name," he said, stepping back. "She just told me to give it to the chef." The note didn't say who wrote it. Anger burned inside me. "You don't understand," I said, my voice shaking. "My grandson is severely allergic to shrimp. Even a small piece could kill him." David turned pale. "Ma'am, I swear I didn't know. I was just following instructions." Other waiters whispered among themselves, confused and concerned. I held the crumpled paper tightly. I wanted to scream, but Leo needed me. I had to stay focused. Inside the ballroom, someone cheerfully announced that the main course was about to be served. The words felt cruel. Every second mattered. I took a deep breath and went back inside. The ballroom glowed with candlelight, jazz music, and laughter, but to me it all felt fake. Leo sat close to Lucy, trembling, his scared eyes fixed on me. I took his hand, then suddenly stood up. "Before we begin eating," I said loudly, "I need to clarify something." The entire room fell silent. Glasses stopped clinking. Conversations died instantly. All eyes turned to table 8. I held up the paper. "Who wrote this note asking to add shrimp to the child serving at table 8? I asked, my voice shaking but clear. Whispers spread across the hall. People looked around, confused. Leo clung to me. Alex rushed over from another table. His happy smile disappeared when he saw my face. "Mom, what's going on?" he asked. I didn't answer. I placed the note on the table and pushed it toward him. "Read it," I said, my voice hard, even though inside I was falling apart. Alex took the paper. As he read it, his face turned pale and his hands began to shake. What does this mean?" he asked, shocked. His eyes moved from me to Leo, searching for an explanation. Ava walked over in her shining wedding dress, pretending to look confused. "What's going on? Is this some kind of bad joke?" she asked softly, but I caught a quick flash of panic in her eyes. I stared straight at her, my heart full of anger and fear. "My grandson is allergic to shrimp," I said, my voice trembling. "This isn't a joke. This is attempted murder." My words fell like thunder. The ballroom went silent. Some guests stared with open mouths. Others whispered, looking between me and Ava. Ava forced a small laugh, trying to stay calm. Mrs. Williams, there's no name on that note, she said in a mocking tone. Are you really believing a story from a child who found it? Some guests murmured uncertainly. Maybe it's a misunderstanding. Who would do that at a wedding? My blood burned with anger. Ava's boldness almost stole my voice. I wanted to shout, to tear off her perfect mask, but I held myself back for Leo. Suddenly, Lucy stood up with Leo in her arms, her eyes locked on Ava. That's enough, Ava, she said, her voice cold with hurt. Lucy stepped forward and slapped her. The sharp sound echoed through the room. Everyone froze. Ava held her cheek, stunned, then turned to Alex in tears.
See?
She's jealous and attacking me. What did I ever do to deserve this? Lucy didn't move. Her fists were clenched, her voice shaking with rage. You're the only cruel one here. You tried to hurt an innocent child on your own wedding day. Guests gasped. Doubt spread across the room as Ava's fake smile faded. Alex stood frozen, his eyes moving between all of us. Lucy, calm down, he said shakily, but I could tell he didn't know what to believe anymore. The whispers grew louder. Leo trembled in Lucy's arms. Ava tried to stay composed, but her hands shook. This is slander, she insisted. Someone must have put that paper there to ruin our wedding. I couldn't hold back anymore. I slammed my hand on the table, making the glasses shake. Enough, I said, my voice cutting through the music. David, come here. The young waiter walked over, pale and nervous. I held up the note. Confirm it. Is this the paper you received? David nodded quickly. Yes, ma'am. A woman from another table gave it to me. I dropped it by accident while serving. Before Ava could speak, a weak, trembling voice came from behind. Gloria, Ava's younger sister, was crying. It wasn't Ava who gave it to me, she said through tears. She told me to give that paper to the waiter. I didn't know what it said. The room filled with shocked whispers. Gloria looked terrified, barely 18 and shaking. My heart softened for her. Ava spun toward her sister, face twisted with rage. Shut up, Gloria. How dare you lie about me? But I saw her lips trembling. I'm not lying, Gloria sobbed. I just did what you asked. Her words cut through Ava's lies, leaving the room in stunned silence. One older relative murmured, how could anyone target a child? Lucy stepped forward, holding Leo close. If you keep denying it, we can check the security cameras right now, she said coldly. It won't take long. Ava froze. Her face went pale, her lips tightened, and she looked around desperately. But there was no escape now. She didn't say another word. Her silence was confession enough. Alex stood motionless, his hand shaking on Leo's shoulder, staring in horror at the woman he had just married, Ava. His voice cracked, as if he was desperately trying to believe it was all a misunderstanding, but the way he looked from the note to Leo said everything. I saw his heart break the same way mine had when the truth came out. One of the uncles stood up and shook his head in disgust. Unbelievable. Such wickedness on a day meant for celebration, he muttered, trying to hold back his anger. After Lucy mentioned the security cameras, a heavy silence filled the ballroom. Ava, the woman I once tried to welcome into our family, stood pale and speechless, searching for one last excuse. But the truth was already out. She had nowhere left to hide. Alex walked slowly toward her, his face tense and his eyes red. Ava, tell me the truth. Is it true? He asked, his voice trembling, begging for a small hope that this was all a mistake. But deep down, we both knew he already felt the painful truth. Ava stepped back, forcing a broken smile, but panic was clear in her eyes. You don't believe me? She whispered. This is all their plan. I didn't do anything. But her words were weak, like a candle about to burn out. I stared at her with a heavy heart. The woman I thought would make my son happy now stood before me as a stranger, someone dangerous, someone I never should have trusted. Lucy put a hand on Alex's shoulder, her voice shaking. Leo almost died because of her. Her words hit like a blade. Ava snapped, desperate. Shut up. You're just a jealous intruder. But Lucy didn't move. She shook with anger, yet she stood firm like a shield in front of Leo. Jealous? She said coldly. Look this child in the eyes and tell me you didn't try to hurt him. Leo clung to me, squeezing my hand with his tiny fingers, terrified. Guests began standing up. The celebration was destroyed. Mr. Johnson slammed his palm on the table. This is a disgrace. We can't let this go. Murmurs spread through the hall like waves, drowning Ava in looks of disgust. Alex, torn between truth and the woman he once loved, finally broke. Leo is my son. You try to kill my son at our own wedding. His words hit Ava like a knife. She burst into tears, but I saw it clearly. They weren't tears of guilt, only fear of being exposed. I placed the note on the table and said firmly, anyone who tries to harm my grandson will never set foot in this family again. My voice echoed like a final judgment. Ava glared at me, fire in her eyes, but behind that fire I saw defeat. She hadn't only lost to me, she had lost to the truth. Hotel security approached politely, but firmly. Ma'am, please come with us. Ava stepped back, looking around for someone to defend her, but not a single person moved. Some guests shook their heads and sighed. Unbelievable. How can someone be so cruel? Alex stood still, hands on his head, as if trying to hold himself together. Then his strength gave out. He knelt in front of Leo and whispered, voice cracking.
Forgive-me.
Forgive me for not protecting you. Tears rolled down his cheeks, and my heart broke. I helped him stand, and said quietly, thank God we stopped it in time. This false happiness ends here. I looked at Ava being escorted out, and in that moment, I knew she was never meant to be part of this family. In the days after that nightmare of a wedding, our home felt heavy, full of wounds that still bled and questions no one wanted to ask out loud. I felt like I had woken from a terrible dream where I almost lost Leo, the child I love more than my own life. The story spread everywhere, from neighbors to distant relatives. The phone never stopped ringing. Some blamed Alex for trusting Ava too blindly. Others felt sorry for little Leo, almost a victim of something truly evil. But every call was just a reminder of our pain. Alex withdrew completely. He wasn't the bright man in the navy blue suit anymore. He drove Leo to and from school silently, his eyes full of guilt. The name, Ava, became something forbidden in our home. I watched Alex quietly, knowing he needed time to heal. I didn't blame him. Love can blind anyone. But I also knew our family had to stand back up someday. I continued taking care of Leo, like I always had since Maria left. I cooked his favorite cheesy pasta and soft pudding to give him comfort. But the person who truly healed him wasn't me. It was Lucy. Every morning, she packed his lunch carefully, avoiding anything that could trigger his allergy. She even wrote little notes for his teacher with a crayon smiley that always made Leo grin. Aunt Lucy, you draw so well, he'd say, his eyes glowing with joy. Every afternoon, Lucy took him to the park. I watched them from afar as she taught him to fly a kite, helping him hold the string so it would rise high. When he fell from the slide once, she rushed to him, brushing dirt off his clothes and whispering, "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here." Leo's laughter returned, light and pure, a sound I thought I had lost forever. One night when Leo had a fever, I saw Lucy sitting by his side for hours, gently placing damp cloths on his forehead and telling him a story about a brave little sparrow flying through a storm. I watched from the doorway. Alex watched too, silently. His eyes followed Lucy, full of gratitude, and something else he had ignored for too long. I didn't say a word. I simply stepped back and let them be. For the first time in a while, I felt a small hope rising inside me. One evening, during one of the rare dinners where we finally sat together as a family, Leo suddenly looked up from his plate. His clear little eyes settled on Lucy. "I want Aunt Lucy to be my mommy," he said gently, as if he had thought about it for a long time. The whole table went silent. Lucy blushed and lowered her head, gripping her spoon tightly as if trying to hide her feelings. Alex froze, tears welling in his eyes, as if Leo's words had struck a deep chord in his heart. I smiled and placed my hand on his shoulder. True happiness, son, I said warmly, doesn't come from a dazzling wedding dress. It comes from a sincere heart that knows how to love. Alex looked at me, then at Lucy, and I saw a small spark of hope shine in his eyes. Time passed, and Ava vanished completely from our lives, like a toxic wind blown away. Leo became a happy boy again, always close to Lucy, carrying his red toy car and treasuring the drawings she made for him. I watched him run and play in the yard, feeling relief, but also a pang of pain, remembering all he had endured. One day, Alex took Lucy's hand and stood before me in the living room, his voice trembling but firm. Mom, I know I made a mistake. I was blind. I put Leo in danger. But this time, I don't want to let go of the person who has truly been by our family side. Lucy lowered her head, cheeks flushed, but a radiant smile appeared on her lips. I nodded, tears rolling silently down my cheeks. Son, the only thing I want is for you and Leo to be happy, I said, my voice choked with emotion. That night, after Leo had fallen asleep, I sat by the window and watched the silver moon stretch across the quiet street. Its soft light reminded me that even after dark days, light always finds a way to break through. I whispered to myself, family isn't always made of blood. Sometimes it's chosen with love and courage. After that grim wedding, a new chapter of light truly began for us. I looked toward the yard, where the kite Lucy and Leo had flown the day before still rested. I knew that although old wounds might never fully heal, we would face life together, supported by love and strength. Through all of this, I learned something important. There are losses that can't be replaced, betrayals that break the heart, but true love is the light that guides us. Family isn't built only by blood. It's built by choices, by the courage to protect each other from darkness, and by sacrifice and sincere affection. Lasting happiness comes from truth and care, not false appearances. I hope everyone takes this to heart. Listen. Let your heart guide you. A small gesture of attention can save a life. Kindness can pull us through nights that seem endless. The story you've heard has been modified in names and places to protect identities. We share it not to judge, but to inspire reflection. How many mothers suffer in silence in their own homes. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Would you have stayed silent to maintain peace, or dared to face everything to reclaim your voice? I'd love to hear your thoughts, because every story can become a candle lighting the way for others. God bless us all. Courage will always lead us to brighter days. And now, on the final screen, I'll leave you two of the channel's favorite stories. I'm sure they will surprise you.